Has there been a screen presence so commanding, so powerful, so deadly?
I don't know, I'm not so sure about this.
You've got to do something every minute that Sean's not on the air. We're losing money.
If you could just get that overactive imagination of yours to work for you instead of against you, maybe you could...
This means something. This is important.
Now, I'm calling out an SOS. Save our podcast.
You asked interrogator question around my face. It's gone.
What are you doing?
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Al?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric back once again with the Soul of Detroit, and we have an extra special show today. Our guest is Joe Spencer, who helped run WGPR TV, Channel 62, before it was CBS, back when it was the first black-owned broadcast station, TV station, on the continental United States. And for those of us of a certain vintage, you may remember it from some great reruns, some cool local programming, or maybe just for the scene, which was Our Soul Train, a dance show that is legendary. And Mr. Spencer is going to talk to us about the history of the station, which has got some great events coming up this year, and what it was like to keep this thing on the air, which we appreciate as a crew that tries to cobble together a show every week. So Joe Spencer, thanks for joining us today.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
So it's great to have him here. We've had a great conversation leading up to the show, so I think there's a lot to share here. And then later on in the show, we're going to talk about this issue of guns. I know you're probably all sick of talking about guns, or maybe some of you love talking about it, or maybe you're just sick of the killing. I wrote a column for the Free Press this weekend about my thoughts. As you may know, I'm a new columnist. I don't find sharing my opinion all that comfortable. I'd much rather let the facts speak for themselves, but I felt compelled to weigh in.
Since when?
Well, I mean, in print, on the podcast. I mean, this is this is Chinatown, man. You say whatever you want, but different rules. But
I like the way you squinted at me as you said that, Mark.
Well, I looked at you first to make sure I had some sort of agreement.
I like it. I like it when Sean is like one extension of my left hand.
So I'm not in the right place, right? This is, because I have to turn my neck to see you. Is that what you're saying?
So, Joe, remember when I was telling you this guy's on here to cause trouble? It's good to be validated so rapidly. But anyways, I weighed in on it partly because a lot of people have been talking about this, and because my daughter is about to become a teacher. And I've heard a lot of people talk about teachers being armed to protect themselves. Not a good idea, particularly if you're thinking about my kid.
I know that was my favorite paragraph of your column, because believe it or not, I did read it. But when you said you don't even want her shooting in an open field.
Oh yeah, and I'm someone who's very comfortable with guns. I'm actually a pretty good shot. I've fired everything from an AK-47 to a Tommy gun to a 9mm. Got no problem with guns. And I have people all the time ask me, it's like, do you have a gun? Do you have a gun? You write about powerful, dangerous people. You live in the city where police response time is
lacking.
Slow.
A fiction, yeah. And I say, no, I don't have a gun. I don't feel a need to have a gun to protect myself. The only time I would ever feel a need to kill somebody was if my family was threatened. But I also know that if a guy or a woman comes into my house with a gun and I've got a gun, because of who I am, I'm going to be the second one to draw. And the second one to draw is the first one to die. So I'd much rather try and talk my way out of it, much rather kick your ass, you come through my door. And I've almost been shot a couple times when I was making some nocturnal entries to different residences owned by
sound like a euphemism
by family and what have you. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. So stick around for that. You're probably going to have to get the audio download on that, because I think we're going to be talking about after our YouTube broadcast ends. But if you want to watch the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel ML Elric. You get a reminder every week when we're getting ready to go live. And if you miss a show, you can always watch the replay. But of course, the full audio download is where you get everybody and everything that we have to offer, such as it is. And it's all made possible by our generous sponsors like Mr. Luke Nowacki of Pinnacle Wealth Strategies.
Yeah, stocks, bonds, where do you put your money? Nobody knows. So call Luke Nowacki, Pinnacle Wealth, 248-663-4748. He's going to give you rational financial advice. I was just looking at the market. It started way down. It's climbing back. Nobody can figure this out. You want a long-term strategy. Once again, call Luke, 248-663-4748. Pinnacle Wealth is his company.
And when you call Luke, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates Inc. Member FINRA SIPC. Royal Alliance Associates Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates Inc.
That is a good man. Another guy that knows a lot about guns too, whatever that's worth.
Mr. Nowacki?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hall Financial. We're talking about money. We're talking about finding money, trying to build wealth. Your house is probably one of the most valuable assets you have. And if you are looking to buy a house or refinance your house, our friends at Hall Financial can really help you.
Yeah, or if you need money to, say, pay off credit card debt or a student loan, or you just want to get money out of the house because it's increased in value over this past year, about on average $30,000 in the U.S., Hall Financial can get you a cash-out refinance, consolidate all your debt. If you're paying 25% for a credit card, that's insane. Consolidate it all. Give Hall Financial a try. Give them a call, 866-CALL-HALL. That's 866-CALL-HALL, or go online, callhallfirst.com.
And you can find links to their websites on our website, which is mlsoulofdetroit.com. And when you go there, make sure you let them know that ML sent you. Now, if you go to the Caju Cafe, you don't really need to let them know that I sent you, because I'm
be there.
I'm probably at the end of the bar there with the proprietor, John Rutherford. And there's always something great going on at the Caju Cafe. Great food, great events like music, live music inside and outside. Now the weather's turning great. And feather bowling, one of the few places in the United States when you can go feather bowling. What's feather bowling, you say?
What's feather bowling?
Well, that was more rhetorical. Oh. But yeah, you can find out more at cajucafe.com, and there's always something cool going on there. Usually great music, and great music is what people associate with WGPR, because it started out as a radio station, but sometime in the 70s, an opportunity arose to create a television station owned by the Masons, of all people. I mean, the origin story for WGPR television, it was the first black-owned television station in the continental United States. It was on Jefferson, and there's still a museum there. And when you hear WGPR, I think Detroit, but it actually stood for Grosse Pointe Radio, which is about as Detroit as lavender water and a feather boa. But hey, man, sometimes life is strange. Joe Spencer was a program director there, helped keep the station going. We're pleased to have him on the show. Joe, tell us a little bit about how GPR became this iconic station that it's a place that sort of transcends time.
Well, first of all, the WGPR is because the Masons originally bought WGPR FM, which was the first black-owned FM radio station in the city. And it bought it from a guy who was a Grosse Pointer, and it was actually originally located in Grosse Pointe. And so they retained the letters WGPR FM. And continued, and that was in, I think it was 1968.
Okay.
Was when they bought the radio station. And it really came about, the television station came about when the former WXON was on Channel 62. And they had petitioned the FCC to have their frequency changed from Channel 62 to Channel 20. And that left open a signal, which was Channel 62. And so Dr. Banks, William Banks, who was the head of the International Masons, and Ulysses Boykins, who was a PR guy, and it was one of Dr. Banks's side guys, supported the International Masons and so forth. They were both black Republicans, which was not so common in those days, and Dr. Banks was invited to the White House by Richard Nixon for a dinner, and they were there talking about broadcasting, and it came up to the fact that there was a license available, and they made the pitch to be able to acquire the license. And President Nixon said, yes, we're going to make it happen. And they had just nominated a fellow by the name of Benjamin Hooks, who was a minister in Detroit, but was also nominated and a member of the FCC. And so he guided them through the process, and they got the license. And they were granted a license in 1973, and they took about $3 million to build the station. So,
Joe, when did you start there? When did you start programming?
Well, my journey was a little different than most. I was working at Channel 4 when they went on air. In fact, I was a producer and director for Channel 4. And I was working with Jerry Blocker, and Jerry Blocker happened to be the first black
legendary newsman,
anchorman in this city. Okay, and he was at Channel 4, and I was directing his newscast, and he made the decision to go join Channel 62 as the first black-owned television station before it went on the air. So he helped form the programming and the news department.
Probably gave it a lot of legitimacy with potential advertisers and investors.
Absolutely. So, as a result of him going there, after they went on the air, he called me, Joe, we need your help over here, because they didn't really have a lot of people who had broadcast experience, particularly production experience, and that was my background, production, because I was a director, So I left Channel 4 about 30 days after they went on the air. That's when I joined them, and I joined their group as an executive producer, not as the program director. George White was the program director for the station.
Because getting the license is huge, and the idea is huge, and we're going to produce all this local stuff, and it's going to be great. But then reality hits, and it's like, oh boy, this is a lot hard. This is a lot more expensive, I would think. The technology is expensive. Producing local programming is pretty tough in the mid 70s, and I just wondered, how did you weather that, and how did you come up with what to put on TV to fill that kind of that mission statement of serving black people in the city of Detroit?
Well, it was a matter of real life circumstances, in that WGPR Channel 62 was an independent television station.
Yeah.
They didn't have a network feeding it like 247
NBC or CBS.
NBC,
Yeah.
So to fill the programming, they had to produce programming, and when they put the station together, they knew they were going to have to do it. In fact, they had some really, really ambitious
soap opera, some other stuff.
There you
which
go.
never happened because it just the funding wasn't there. But we produced a lot of local talk shows. We produced a couple of news programs. We produced a lot of programming around entertainment, gospel entertainment, regular R&B entertainment. And we also had some syndicated programming, program that had been on the networks and was in syndication. And for those who don't know what syndication is after the program has its life on the network, it goes into syndication.
It's like streaming before streaming for the kids out there, right?
Yeah, well, and it seems like there's still stations around like that, like Channel 38, where you can watch old Hawaii Five-0, and All in the Family and all this other stuff. You guys had I Spy, Rawhide, what have you?
Oh, yeah. We had a lot of those programs. You know what I most watched off-network program, and it wasn't actually an off-network program in the United States, Doctor Who.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Doctor Who?
Yeah, I know Doctor Who.
And
Yeah,
I think you guys had Dark Shadows on.
Dark Shadows, too.
The vampire soap opera.
That was a really big one, yeah.
I just remember the quality of the video on that, because I think it was so old. It was like, is something wrong with my set? I mean, it was really...
It was black and white for sure then.
Yeah, it was, you really had the feeling of, I'm watching something different than I get on every other channel.
Was it a struggle, or was it exciting because it's like, hey, we can kind of the Wild West?
Oh, no, it was very exciting. For me, having come from Channel 62, from Channel 4 to Channel 62, it's a little different because they weren't quite as well equipped as the NBC stations. Didn't have the people around that had all the knowledge, because most people this was their first job in broadcast.
Yeah, you get to Channel 4, you've come up through Alpena, Saginaw, Flint. You make
Right, exactly.
GPR has a mission that we're going to give black folks a chance in broadcast. So you get a lot of people like, oh, this sounds great, but
Well, it's way
coming
ahead
from
of the-
Channel 4, you're probably like, okay, we need to do this, do that, and somebody's like, What is that?
Well, I kind of knew what I was getting into, because I know that a couple of guys, Jerry had sent a couple of guys from the station for me to kind of tutor them, in terms of production before they went on the air. Okay. And one very, very, really sharp kid that really did well in broadcasting, Kenny Bryan, went over to Channel 50 after he finished his career at Channel 62. But, that was the thing. A lot of people came to the station that did not have experience. And we became kind of like a training ground in many ways because the backstory of that is that the FCC back in the late 60s had required stations to begin to reflect the communities that they serve in terms of their employment. Okay, so, stations that were basically, forgive me for the term, lily white, had to now begin to bring in some African Americans. So a lot of young kids were coming out of college, didn't have any experience, and they go to the television station, they go to Channel 247, and they'd get them to the interview and they ask them, well, what experience do you have? Which was kind of traditional. Usually if you came to a Channel 2 or 47, you had been like Alpino or somewhere else, a smaller market. Yeah. And so they said, well, no, we don't have any experience. They said, go get some. So we were the stop.
Okay.
They came there, and that's where they got their initial training, you know what I mean? And, we put hundreds of people through our station that went on to stations all across the country, and many of them here in Detroit, 2, 4, and 7, 50, 56. But anyway,
a big name people will remember is Amir Jacobson.
Amir Jacobson, yeah.
Years was a great anchor woman.
Sean Robinson, who was the anchor for Access Hollywood, came out of Detroit. Pat Harvey, number one anchor person in Los Angeles for years, came out of Detroit. Got her first training here. I was the first person to put on a camera, in front of a camera. Yeah. So it really was exciting, because we had this demand. I mean, we had some syndicated programming, but we had a lot of hours we had to fill with local programming, and we were sometimes churning around the clock. You know what I mean? With the crew doing one program.
As a young man's game.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun. A lot of young people, and a lot of people, just trying ideas. And so
I would think the other struggle then would be advertisers, who are, I would guess, then very uncertain about a black-owned station serving black consumers, even though there's plenty of data to show who's watching, when they're watching, that kind of thing. Was that a struggle? I mean, that must have been a massive struggle.
Well, that's really a sad story because when the station first went on, a lot of the advertisers had committed to give advertising to WGPR. The auto companies.
Yeah, you got the big three here. Perfect place. Yeah,
and they had. But the station ran into technical problems. They had technical problems right at the very beginning. In the middle of program it goes black. You know what I mean? And or the tape doesn't work right, and that had a lot to do with the inexperienced technical staff, the engineers that were there. And
they weren't scared to advertise or anything. They weren't
scared, but I tell you, when that started happening.
They backed out?
Took flight, yes.
Really?
Oh, yeah. It's like who wants to be associated with that kind of programming? You know what I mean? I mean, it was good programming, but it was, the technical problems that happened,
So GPR, one of the big successes, The Scene, the big dance show, compared to Soul Train. Soul Train was out before then, and I remember reading about Soul Train, and one of the successes they had was Don Cornelius knew somebody who was a purchaser for Sears and Roebuck. So he got them on board, and they were like, wow, this show works. Did The Scene, was it modeled directly after that? Was that kind of the thing? And did you get Sears and Roebuck on?
Well, no, we never got that. But they did have some of the local Faygo, Pop, and the potato chip companies, and some of the jelly.
But they must have seen a response, though, is kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. But unlike the bigger advertisers, once they turned away, they weren't coming back. You know what I mean?
Oh God,
that's just.
I know that.
That was one of the sad situations. But we struggled on. We found a way. And a lot of the local advertisers came on, and they had a chance to expose their products and so forth. So that's how we survived.
It's fascinating.
How did you deal with things like equipment? Equipment is so expensive. I mean, now people can produce a newspaper, a movie on their iPhone. But back then, you're talking about big cameras, huge battery packs. They've got to go into tape decks. I mean, the technical aspect of it is daunting. The expense of it has got to be crippling. And then the inexperience where, there's no shortcuts because every time someone's run into a problem, it's the first time they've run into a problem. I mean, were you just constantly biting your fingernails off, wondering how are we going to make this thing happen?
Well, you're absolutely right. The equipment was terribly expensive. It was like the cameras that we use today cost 10 times more than than what they cost now. I think we were using a TK-47. I think it was an RCA camera. It cost $75,000, which in 1975 was a lot of money. And I'm gonna tell you, that was one of the things that got us in trouble from the point that we were buying new equipment, but we were kind of ahead of the game. We bought some equipment that was not being utilized in the market.
You did video first, right? I thought I heard you say you did video when most were 16 millimeter.
Yep, that's it. That was a good example, but that worked for us. When everybody else was using 16 millimeter film to produce news, field footage in the news for the news department, we were using video, and which gave us a competitive edge from the point is that, as I think we were talking about before, we go out and shoot, in 30 minutes we could have it on the air, where the other stations with their 16 millimeter.
They have to process it, right?
The processing and editing process was also time consuming. So, we got on much quicker. But we used one piece of equipment that was, it was terrible for us. It was called a RCA, I can't remember. But it was a machine that you put your commercials on, and you put them in. It was a cartridge-based system as opposed to the reel-to-reel, which was everybody else was using.
Looks like an 8-track tape or something.
Yeah, like, exactly. So you put that in, and that thing, the bugs were not worked out of that thing, and that gave us so much trouble. And that's where the problem came because, of course, the advertisers' commercials are on these cartridges. So, get ready to play their commercials, and they go halfway through, and they go,
That's so frustrating, though.
Yeah, it was kind of sad. But
what did you do to keep them on board? I mean, at some point, somebody's got to say, "Hey, man, I can't keep trying. I got to move on. You guys aren't ready for prime time."
Well, we lost a lot of advertisers on that, but there were other advertisers that came on board after that, and so we had a lifeblood, and we changed the way we did some things. We had to reinvent ourselves in some ways. We had to put aside that $200,000. RCA, TK, TR, whatever it was, I can't remember, but we had to put that aside and go to 3/4-inch videotape in order to put the commercials on. So we eventually overcame those problems, many of them, but by the time we overcame them, we had lost a lot of support we had in terms of the advertising community, in terms of the major advertising community. They had turned their backs and they weren't coming back.
This show, The Scene, modeled after or similar to Soul Train. Did you get acts like Soul Train?
Oh, yeah.
And were they national? Were they local? What kind of acts did you get?
We got everybody. Everybody that came into town came to WGPR. That if they were an African-American oriented act or performance. And, the thing that was really, really unique about it is because we had the radio station there.
Yeah.
They got a double bang for the buck.
Cross-promotion, sure.
Exactly. So, if there was a concert coming in, if there was a play coming in, if there was a book author coming in, we got all of those people.
Did you dance on the scene?
Did I dance?
Yeah.
The scene would have been a total flop.
Did you have friends asking you all the time, like, "Hey, get me in"?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We got a lot of people.
Party.
There.
I mean, that's.
Who were some of your favorite acts? Mike needs a little history, maybe, and what music is.
Stevie Wonder came through Earth, Wind, and
Stevie
Fire.
Wonder. He played the piano. So
Stephen, he was
synthesizer a little bit later.
got the cornrows at him. Yeah, I know Stevie Wonder.
George Clinton and Parliament.
Love him.
He was a funk singer.
We got the funk.
With the I thought he was an English politician with the Parliament. So you're telling me that's somebody else?
So did you get to hang out with these guys when they came in? Where you're like, "I'm gonna take care of this talent. I will get them to where they need to be."
Well, I know. I mean, yeah, I always did.
Yeah.
Because because they were doing the show when is coming back into the studio. We had to bring them in. But in terms of hanging with them outside of that arena, not much. I mean, just sometimes. But
Did
not
George
much.
Clinton wear a diaper?
someone in the group did.
Well, Bootsy Collins has it, on stage. So
Someone always, even to this day, has a diaper
They
on.
wear a diaper now. No, that doesn't.
Yeah, now it's out of need, though, right?
It's not an
But
option.
these were all great people, great talent. I mean, great talent.
Oh,
a lot of
yeah.
people came by. And like I said, that was a great advantage by us having the radio station. What we also had the benefit of is that back in those days, radio was the basis for music success. So when artists recorded new albums, they did tours. They did promotional tours. And so they would have to come to the radio station because the radio was a great outlet for them. And so we got not only people coming in town for like concerts and that kind of performances, but they came on tours, promotional tours. And, it was one of those things where because we had this influx of talent coming in, we were able to make arrangements with local entertainment venues to bring these people in, and that really created a lot of popularity for things like the scene and so forth, because we would bring these people to the public, and so it was a good time. It was a really good time.
Was the scene the most popular show?
It was.
It was, okay.
It was, yeah.
Now, so I grew up in Grosse Pointe, where Grosse Pointe Radio started, and I was broke, and even by white Grosse Pointe kids' standards, pretty dorky. But I always would watch the scene.
I'm
I was
shocked.
like, not much has changed, except I live on the other side of Mac now. But I instead of delivering the papers, I write the paper. But I wanted to go on the scene, and I knew it was like, okay, so I'm not a great dancer, can't afford an outfit, and it was. Well, my understanding was that if you want to get on the scene, you had to show up early. You had to wait to get in, almost like going to Studio 54 back in those days. And people would say, okay, you're cool enough to get on, you're cool enough to get on, you're cool enough to get on. And what I had heard was if you want to get on, do not dress all in white because it's just too bland to make the scene. How much of that is myth? How much of that is real?
Let's see now. It was not so discriminatory with regards to people coming in. If you showed up, as long as we had room for you, you could get on. So
Okay.
we didn't have that. We did ask people to dress in colorful outfits. White was kind of glaring anyway on TV.
Yeah, no, it's tough with the lighting.
Yeah, so it was more for that more so than anything. But but these kids had their own style.
Yeah.
We didn't try to dictate their style. And someone asked, did we try to imitate Soul Train? There was a couple of local TV stations that did dance before the scene. Channel 9 in Canada had a dance show. And then
A lot of accordions on that one.
no, this was
okay.
a dance show. I'm trying to think of what's name. Swinging Time.
Okay.
Swinging Time. Yeah, Swinging Time they had a show there. And there was another one that was on. There was.
Well, there's always
they
American
kinda,
Bandstand too.
Yeah, there was American, they were more like American Bandstand.
Oh yeah, and when I worked in New Hampshire, they had a popular music show. With the old dude wearing a suit and kind of the Brill creamed hair. It's like, okay, kids, we're gonna spin some platters. Like, whose dad?
What year was that?
Well, I met the guy who was the host. He did it in like the 50s and the 60s. Okay. By then, he had, he was pretty square back then, and he'd moved on. But yeah, this was a staple local programming. And one of the things about WGPR that I think really harkened back to TV's origins was a lot of locally produced shows, which you never see here. I mean, I remember PM Magazine on Channel 2, which was a local nightly news magazine. We don't have anything like that. You might get Let It Rip. And
Kelly
maybe
huge too. Yeah.
You might. Well, Channel 2 in the mornings has a lot of locally produced stuff, but nobody's making like a show. That's gone.
Yeah, everybody is doing news, and that's it. And variations of news programming, but they're not doing the kind of variety shows that they did. When I was working at Channel 4, we used to do a show, Oopsie the Clown. You know what I mean?
I remember Oopsie the
We did a
Clown.
hunting show. You know, we did Michigan Outdoors.
Yeah,
you know?
that was a huge
Soupy
success.
Sales was a local guy.
Soupy Sales, yeah.
He started here before he went back to New York.
Did you bring some of that to GPR? Where you're like, we got to have a kids show. We got to do.
We did have a kids show. We had a show. We had a kid show, and we had a teen show, teen profile. Got kids from all over, you know, talking about politics and things and that adults were talking.
I don't think people today know how hard that would have been to just pull off a station from scratch in the 70s.
Well, it was hard, I guess. But, like most things that are new and succeed, people who are doing them don't realize they're hard. They're just doing it.
Sure.
They're doing their best, and some of it's good, and some of it is questionable.
Are you surprised today? I mean, the landscape has changed so much, but still the ownership by blacks is still very, very low. I mean, you have Byron Allen, and then
Yeah, Byron Allen, man, that dude is he's legendary.
does
now.
he have any connection to GPR? I mean, he was born here, but I know he moved when he was a kid.
When he first started his production company, he had we carried some of his programming. He had it in syndication. So I had a chance to meet him and talk with him back in the day. This was back in the 90s.
Okay, when he was transitioning from being a comic to a mogul.
He was always doing his comic thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had like a round table with different comedians on there. I mean, very, very sort of low production value, but I mean,
exactly.
and I think it's still on,
Yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
still on.
Oh, yeah.
It's on. You can see it on. I think it's channel 50 or channel 20 in the morning.
Yeah, it's.
But I just wonder, did he ever say to you, like, yeah, I watched that station. I'm trying to think of how old he is. If he would have been around when, he would have been here, I would think.
He's got to be in his 60s, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know. We never really even had that conversation.
He stole your idea.
He was just. I remember him first meeting him in Las Vegas because at the National Programming
A junket,
annual meeting. Yeah. And he was there trying to sell his programming, and I met him and we talked, and he ended up coming to Detroit. And we put some of his programming on. I think we had two, The Entertainer, and there was another program that he had was on.
Huh.
Yeah.
What was your favorite show on GPR?
The Scene.
The Scene, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that was the most popular. That was the most active. It had more legs than anything else, But we did a lot of shows. The news was good, too. I mean, we did a lot of news programming.
How did it differ from, 2, 4, and 7? Like, how did it differ? How did news on GPR differ?
The news, the point of the news was to have a black perspective of the news. You know what I mean? So it was the same news, but oftentimes written a little differently, with a different point of view, looking at a sidebar of the news as opposed to what might be the main story. That kind of thing. It still did the news, and then it had some world news in it too. There were still things happening in Africa. We tried to focus on that, so we tried to not just be local, but we were still basically primarily doing local news and dealing with issues that were the main issues and issues that were important in the black community.
Just a little reminder.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Just a little reminder that you guys are kind of old. I was not yet alive when this station was under its operation. I just wanted to know.
Make us feel old, jeez.
I just wanted to know what was like the public perception of the people of Grosse Pointe and the people of Detroit, and if you know, what was the perception of surrounding states and countries about how this station, obviously being the first black-run station in the continental U.S., you said, right?
Yeah, I think there were a couple other states like in
the islands.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So, but right here, where you're gonna have a big audience.
And to your point, we believe that WGPR was the first black-owned and operated television station that in the world that was not owned by the government. That the stations in the other communities, that were some in some of the islands and so forth, they were owned by the government. This was the first privately
Almost
owned.
like community access or something.
Right, exactly. This was the first privately owned television station. That's what we believe. We've been trying to find if that's so. And every television station that we have been able to find that was on the air prior to WGPR, that was in a black nation for the most part in the community, it was owned by the government. Okay. But certainly in the United States, we were the first.
Did you have any sports programming? Because sports on TV, there were different governing rules as to what teams could be on, and all that's gone now. I mean, every sporting event is on TV now. But I would just think that would be a really good way to get programming on a TV station that's kicking off in the 70s.
Well, we had sports programming on, but it was not programming that we produced. I mean, we produced sports news. Mm-hmm. We did that. We had news segments in the news, within the news, and we had some news shows. But we got a couple of coups during the life of WGPR, and there were anytime there were the bowl games,
sure,
and the games, college games, they would be up for bids, and a lot of times we would get the packages, and one year we got the Ms. Lou Sports Networks package, and in it was Michigan State.
Oh,
and they went to the championship that year, and so we got
79.
Yeah, right.
That would have been huge.
It was huge. I mean, we had numbers that we'd never seen. And, we made more money than we ever seen in one time, And the thing was really funny about it is that when, of course, nobody thought anything of it when we bought it because, that was in September the year before,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and we got the rights to it, And so when it came that there was going to be this big game that we were going to be in charge, all the stations came to us trying to buy it from us.
So you got the Magic Bird title game.
No. You know what it was? It wasn't Michigan. It wasn't the Michigan State. It was the Michigan.
Oh, it was Michigan.
It was
76.
This was which bowl game was that?
It was football.
Okay.
It was football. Yes. It wasn't. It was.
So it was a Rose Bowl, maybe.
It wasn't Rose Bowl. It was what bowl was that? But anyway, it was a bowl game, and Michigan was in it, and people I think it was like 78.
There you go.
Okay.
78?
ML is right. It was the 1981 Blue Bonnet Bowl.
Blue Bonnet Bowl, that's what it was.
Michigan and UCLA.
Yes.
All I know is they probably lost.
No, they won big.
Oh, did
jerk.
they? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
so then it definitely wasn't a Rose
Biases
Bowl.
on the side.
Hey, congratulations to Michigan baseball for winning the men's Big Ten championship.
She sounds very
So
sincere.
I just
there.
want to throw that
I'll
out
accept it. They stole a bid.
But so
insincere.
what were some of the biggest challenges besides the technical stuff? I mean, were there a lot of personalities? I know in TV stations you get a lot of people thinking that they, tough to get those heads through the doorways. I was, of course, the exception there. But Sean, we had to enlarge the door to get him in here. But when you look back at it,
We call that projecting, Joe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Say the speaker he's the source? Huh?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, exactly.
The biggest challenge was always money.
Yeah.
It was always money, you know what I mean? And of course, as people matured and got that talent and got themselves anchored, they were looking for another opportunity. So when they really started to get good, they were going off to the other stations, you know what I mean? So we had a constant turnover of people. But we knew that. I mean, we accepted that role,
Sure.
And I'm happy to see people go on to do well, But that was a challenge there, just to try to keep good people going, And that was both in front of the camera and behind the cameras, because when those guys learned the production side of things and learned how to operate the cameras and all that.
Sure, I'm sure somebody came and stole them away.
And then
flashed some money and.
Well, of course, what
ran 'em
happens is one person would go to Channel 4, and then suddenly they're telling, their former coworkers, hey, there's some opportunity over here, and so next thing you know, you've got 3 or 4 people over there.
How long did it take for the station to turn a profit?
I sometimes wonder if it ever did.
Really?
A real profit. I mean, it was probably all borderline
on
for
paper.
most of the time. You know what I mean? Because it hired a lot of people, and
sure.
there's a lot of, and the revenues were not just that high. But we made it. But yeah.
And then it ends mainly because you tell me if this is right or wrong. When Fox bought the NFL package, that really put a disarray into everything. Because growing up, it was always 2 was CBS, 4 was NBC, 7 was ABC, just like in a lot of major markets in America. And next thing you know, Fox, which was that was channel 50, I believe.
50, yeah.
So now it's like, well, we got this NFL package. We need a better signal. 2 flips, and it's just a domino effect. And CBS was like, we need a frequency, a tower.
You got the story right.
Okay.
And the thing about it, that was a domino effect across the country.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, to stations all over the country flipped to get that NFL package and left a lot of stations out there. In the case of Detroit, CBS, which had been on JBK, was without a home. And instead of what would normally be is that, you know, CBS would come over to channel 50, which was the former Fox station.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 50 had just started the
the
UPN.
WB.
UPN.
Yeah.
So they couldn't do it. And channel 20, the other station in the market, had just contracted for the WB on the Warner Brother network.
Oh, wow.
Nobody anticipating all of this, you know. So
that both of those happened before Fox, or so 50 must have happened right
they
after.
all happened the same year.
Wow.
They all happened the same year, same time, because.
And so CBS is just going, what are we going to do in Detroit?
Yeah, right.
Really?
So they came to.
Well, they have no leverage then.
Yeah.
So somebody must have got rich off this deal.
Well, I mean, they paid a substantial amount of money to the owners, to International Masons, for the rights to the station.
So it went to the Masons.
Yeah, well, they owned the station.
Did it go to Spencer? Did it go to Joe Spencer?
Yeah, how much trickle down was there?
Exactly. Enough? Not enough.
Joe's microphone.
His silence is very loud. Yeah.
That means some.
Well,
that's good. I mean,
the results of that is I ended up working for CBS. That was the trickle down. I became the program director for CBS.
Well, yeah, so touch on that a little bit too. I mean, you have this black-owned station with a lot of black talent that is now bought by a network. Do they come in and just say, "You guys have been doing a great job, but we're the network, so we're going to show you how it's done. Everybody gets a severance and a handshake"?
Okay, the way it happened was really simple. You know, there's a transition time between when they make a deal to buy a station and when the license is actually transferred. So there was like almost a year that WGPR was in charge of the station, but we started putting CBS programming on the station. You know what I mean? So the primetime programming went to station, and then some of the local.
Like you're an affiliate before
right.
they buy it. Okay.
Exactly, and so some of the local programming continued. You know. And but with notice that, hey, when the license transfer, you know, you're going to have to find a new place to do what you do. And
really?
Yeah. And so that's what happened basically. Some of the programming went away. A couple of programs were actually retained for like a year, even after CBS went on the air. You know, became controlling of the station. But, you know, it was just basically, hey, they bought the station because they wanted to do CBS programming.
And that's it.
That's it, you know.
And what about the staff? I mean, all these opportunities for black folks getting into broadcast, did they keep a lot of people? Or did they say, you know, we're gonna lighten things up a little bit here?
No, because the station had the radio station, some of the people floated into radio, okay, and others went to things like the engineering department and the area, the program, the traffic department, and so forth. So they did pick up some of the people, but everybody didn't go. You know.
Okay, and looking back on that, I mean, I'm sure with the network resources behind you, you're not worried as much about. Is this $200,000 RCA deck that doesn't work? You know, those worries go away. But do you look back and say, "Oh man, I kind of wish that this was more like it was," as opposed to a lot of our problems just went away, but we also lost kind of a special opportunity.
Well, you know, from my perspective, I would have loved the station to continue on. You know, but. You know, it ran its course. You know, I mean, and sadly to say, it did what it did. And when CBS came along, you know, they had the money to do it, and they did what they did. So it was a business opportunity for the Masons, and so they went ahead and did it. and many people had gone on to other careers. So it did what it was supposed to do, as things are. I don't look back in remorse. Or look back. I personally was glad to move to CBS, because
Sure.
I was the program director. I came in as from Channel 4 as a producer and was the executive producer for like 6 years, but for like 14 years, I was the program director, and I had a lot of fun doing programming, but to go into CBS and now have opportunity to operate at that level, which was a higher level, just no doubt.
Yeah.
It was good for me, so I was sorry, but I also, it was like it was time, so.
And GPR still is with us. There's a broadcast museum,
Right.
And there's an event coming up in September. Tell us a little bit about what's going to happen this fall to get people either schooled up or a trip down memory lane with Channel 62.
Well, let me give you the backstory. Back in 2011, some of the people who had worked at WGPR began a conversation with me and Amir Porter. Her name was Amir
Yeah.
Porter when she worked for us. Nat Morris from The Scene and some of the other people started talking about, the fact that this was historic and that we shouldn't just let it die, And so we decided to put together what we call the WGPR Historical Society with the idea of retaining and continuing the memory of what the station was. And we had a young lady by the name of Karen Hudson Samuels, who had been our news director, who had really had a fabulous career with Ford Motor Company, was retired, and decided that she would take on the helm of executive director for it. And so we began just trying to have little fundraisers and do things, and we eventually ended up, through her affiliation with the Detroit Historical Museum, putting a community event there. And we had an exhibit at the Detroit Historical Society for like a 60-day presentation in their community gallery. And from that, because we collected all these materials and all this, and footage from back then, photos, stories and so forth, we decided, well, hey, it's over with. We need to do something. So we went to the International Masons, which still had the radio station and still had the building that was there and the studios. We said, hey, how about we build a museum here? And they said, okay.
All right.
And they did the funding, and they funded the building of the studio.
And it also got its historical marker.
Got its historical marker. It's now not only a national historic, a Michigan historical, but it is a national historic site now. But that started the whole thing. So we have been building the museum and building the content for the museum. So we're having a fundraiser coming up in September, with the purpose of doing a couple of things that we really want as we continue to try to build this space out. First of all, we want to build an interactive studio where people can come in. We have an news anchor desk and a weather green board there, and people can come in, read a news script, from a teleprompter, and walk away with a video stick to take home that they can, show that they were on TV. So that's one of the things we want to do. We also want to continue our legacy of training. So we're developing a training program for 12 to 18-year-olds, high schoolers, to give them that introduction into TV production, writing, the different aspects.
So holding that market now.
Yep. And we also we're looking to try to bring, because right now we're an all-volunteer organization, so we're looking to try to bring in some funding so we can have a director, executive staff.
Sure.
Right, exactly. Get a grant writer to help us continue on, because quite frankly, if International Masons had not come in and put in the money that it took to put this, and it was quite a large investment to get it, it wouldn't have gone any place, But we, through their generosity, we have been able to get it going. But now we want to try to have it stand up on its own legs, And
is there a website or?
Well, yeah.
Is it a Facebook page? I mean, where can people get information?
Well, they can look for it on Detroit, WGPR History.
Okay.
And we're going to start publicizing it very, very soon.
Okay.
We're starting to make it. It'll be an event that'll happen September 9 and 10. On September 9, we're going to have a youth program where we're going to bring some young people in and have them to meet some celebrities to talk about the world of sports. I should share with you that anchoring this whole event is Stephen A. Smith. He's coming in town.
Awesome.
To be our
ESPN.
I love him.
ESPN. Stephen A. Smith is coming in to be our keynote speaker for our banquet dinner, which we're going to have on the 10th. But on the 9th, he's going to participate in a youth program. We're going to bring some other sports celebrities in so the youth can talk to him.
I love it.
Man.
And so that's going to happen, and you know we're calling it the legacy event, where we're taking the legacy of WGPR and legacy of some other people, and we're celebrating that black people in media, and because the whole idea, and you all know this, is that, as it was said earlier, there are fewer and fewer black voices in media now, you know, and that there's a real need to have black voices expressing the opinion and point of view of the world, just as everybody else is, you know. And just want to backtrack a little bit, just a little bit. You know, another thing that the television station WGPR had is it had foreign language programming on it. We had Arab programming on it. We had Polish programming on, and we had three different ethnic programs on, and I think it's important for everybody to have a voice, you know. And so, you know, we're raising money for that to kind of continue that legacy and continue the voice of African Americans in the voice of America. So there will be the youth event on September 9th, which is a Friday. And there will be the banquet. Well, actually, it's going to be a VIP champagne reception at the museum.
Okay.
And then there will be a banquet dinner at the Icon. I don't know if you're familiar with the Icon, but Icon is the facility that General Motors and UAW built. It sits on the river.
Oh, sure. Yeah, not too far from the studios.
Not too far from the studios. Right around the corner, in fact, from the studios. They built that there, so we're going to have the banquet dinner there at the Icon.
Okay.
Good
luck. And is that studio open for regular tours? I mean,
yes, we have tours on Fridays right now, because we are all volunteer organization, and most of us still work, including me.
Sure. With a couple of restaurants, in fact, we're going to talk about that. We may be getting a little long, but Sean doesn't know that much about good food. I usually try to help him out, but
I know nothing. But I'd like to hear.
Okay. But yeah, as if television isn't hard enough, you want to get into you do restaurants too.
Well, these
are very challenging industries.
It is, and really now, especially now.
Yeah.
But I had the good fortune back when I was still working in broadcasting to invest in a restaurant called Louisiana Creole Gumbo.
Nice.
Which is really a historic restaurant in this city now. It's been around since 1970, so it's been serving up gumbos, creoles, and jambalaya since that time.
Right there on Gratiot and St. Aubin.
Yeah. We actually have three restaurants. One at Gratiot and St. Albans, which is just on the south side of the Eastern Market. And we have the west one restaurant.
That's the mothership, as Mojo might have said.
Right. And we have one
electrifying Mojo, not the other clown on 95, whatever the hell it is. But.
Yeah. And Mojo's a good guy, too. I talk to him all the time. He's
the original Mojo. Oh, we'd love to have Mojo on sometime if you think he'd come out.
He says he's retired.
Yeah, well, we may have our satellite get in touch with his planet and see if we can beam an invitation out to him.
Yeah. But going back, in terms of the question of can public come out to the museum, we are, as I said, an all-volunteer organization, so, you know, we got to have people there to kind of escort people there. So we're going to move. We were open on Fridays only. Now we're going to be moving to open on Saturdays only.
Okay.
So, you know, make it a little bit more accessible to the general public, being open on Saturdays. So Saturdays, by the end of June, we'll be open every Saturday between noon and 5 o'clock.
Okay, great. And that's right on East Jefferson Avenue. We'll try and get a link to that on our website, which is ML Soul of Detroit. And do you have a website for the restaurants we can share with people?
DetroitGumbo.com.
DetroitGumbo.com.
There you go.
Thanks for bringing food in today. As if I need more.
Food for thought. Food for thought.
Yeah, there you go.
If you want to invite me back to talk about the restaurant, I'll bring some food.
Very self-serving.
Joe Spencer, former program director for WGPR, keeping the flame lit and still making things happen as a restaurateur. We really appreciate you coming in. Thanks for everything you're doing to help keep this incredibly important institution alive, and it sounds like getting people ready for the next wave of great broadcasters from Detroit.
Well, I thank you so much for allowing me to share the story, and
Great
I hope
story.
that people will support the museum because we want to continue to train and to do good in the legacy of Dr. Banks and the WGPR Channel 62.
It's right there in the heart of Detroit. So Joe, thanks for coming in, and best of luck, and maybe we'll see you out there in September.
I hope so.
With Stephen A.
Good luck.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
So I'd like to offer a note to self here. If you ever write a story about how easy it is to get away with murdering your spouse, don't buy ghost gun parts on eBay, and do your best to make sure that your spouse outlives you, or at least dies a natural death that's above suspicion. That's some wisdom that would have served romance novelist Nancy Brophy very well. A decade after writing a blog post speculating that a wife who kills her spouse must be ruthless and very clever because she is likely to become the prime suspect. Well, Ms. Brophy was recently convicted of killing her husband after prosecutors succeeded in portraying her as the prime suspect. And as a duplicitous spouse who spent months quietly plotting the perfect crime and cashing in on lucrative life insurance policies. Ms. Brophy is not a novelist that you know, because I think most of her romance novels have been self-published. But she may not have won many literary awards, but she's won our little honor, which we call Geek of the Week.
I am not having a good day.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
So you may have heard the news that Andy Fletcher of Depeche Mode died last week. He was one of the founders of this iconic new wave band. And so, I'm sure you know Dave Gahan and Martin Gore, and maybe even knew that Vince Clarke was one of the founding members of Depeche Mode. But Andy Fletcher is kind of the forgotten member of Depeche Mode. So I started reading up about Andy Fletcher and was surprised to learn that his contributions to Depeche Mode were mostly on the business side, that he was not one of the creative geniuses, and that while he did contribute some things early on, he's the only member of the group never to have a songwriting credit. But nevertheless, this trip down memory lane with Depeche Mode is our whole excuse for playing their very first single, Dreaming of Me.